Today on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings, we are going to talk about boomer bust or flip players, some players that are very volatile, that are could make or break your league. I'll be talking with Faraz Siddiqi from UpperHand Fantasy, all coming up next. Everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Faraz Siddiqi from UpperHand Fantasy. Make sure to give him a follow on Instagram at UpperHand Fantasy. Faraz, welcome. I know you do a lot of your business, if not most of your business, over on Instagram. Over 180,000 followers now. Congrats on building such a following and building up such a great career.
I appreciate that so much. And you know what, Jeff, that means so much coming from you. Like I have been, following, your content and all your stuff for such a long time now. It's such a pleasure, to be on your show. So I'm super excited. But yeah, no, we've been doing this on Instagram for like, 5 or 6 years now. And, it's one of those things where, you kind of, you put in, a lot of it up front. And then finally now, it's like, that overnight success type of thing. And it's like, oh, wait, no, like, I've actually been doing this for a minute now. You know what I mean? So it's awesome. I have so much fun with it. And yeah, I'm just happy to be on here. Appreciate you.
Nice. And I'll tell you what, that critical mass, when you hit that, you seal it, you feel it. You're like, okay, this is going to work. We're going to be able to do this there. You have to put in all the sweat capital, all the time to do it there. Would you say you have a specialty? Is there a certain type of format that you specialize in, a certain thing that you're best at?
I would say, I'm big on numbers, right? Like numbers is really what guides me for the most part. But at the same time, I really like to look at the film too. I like to look at the stats, but also I like to look at, what like actual football, right? So I don't want to just sit behind a spreadsheet. I'm at the Senior Bowl every single year. I try to get to the draft whenever I can. So, I try to see these guys in person and not just on the film. I think going to the Senior Bowl actually has been, a huge edge for us, and our community, over on Instagram, with all the content that we put out from there. There's a lot of, gems that you can find, here and there when you're at these events. But yeah, no, ton of redraft, ton of dynasty, ton of best ball. We kind of touch it all. With our community. So it's a lot of fun. We kind of sprinkle in all of it, because it's everybody plays a different format. So, we try to give everybody, a little taste of everything.
Do you have a favorite format?
It's always going to be redraft, and I don't think it's going to change. I think, I love dynasty. It's an all-year commitment, which is nice. So you have some action, in the offseason, but it's always redraft for me, man. It's just like the excitement of knowing who that team is in my home league with my homies. You know what I mean? With the guys that I play with every single year, just knowing who my team's going to be. Like you have your guys, right? And it's really that one team that you really care about. That one team, like it doesn't even matter, like the money involved, the trophy, all that stuff, like it's whatever. It's all about the bragging rights with your friends, right? With my main guys. That's all I care about. That's literally all I care about. I care about that league, and then I want all my people, all the people in my community to win their leagues as well. That's really all I care about.
Absolutely. You know what? Hey, the league that started this site is called Amaki, and it's the first league I've ever been in. It's been going for 30 plus years. I still care about it the most. It took me the longest to win. Too, which I was like the Buffalo Bills of this league for the longest time. Till Arian Foster carried me across the threshold there in his rookie year. First time he started getting the ball like week 14, 15. That was what finally got put me over the hump. So yeah, fond memories of that. Your video on Tyreek Hill has inspired this topic today. He's as you described him, as a player that could flip either way, a boomer bust player. I love the idea. I love the concept, because these are the guys that are so important to us. We have our baseline players, and yes, there's volatility in them too, but there's certain players that are so volatile. And I just wanted to, kind of delve into that concept a little bit more. We'll just start with the cover topic here. Let's talk a little Tyreek Hill, because, folks, follow him on at UpperHand Fantasy. See that video on Tyreek Hill. It's great.
I love it. Yeah, the thing with Tyreek Hill for me, it could flip either way, because you had a situation last year, even when Tua was on the field, this offensive line was a huge reason why Mike McDaniel and Tua had to depend on Devon Etienne, had to depend on Jonnu Smith especially. Now, coming into the year, I think Devon Achane was going to be involved no matter what, right? They were talking him up in minicamp and OTAs and training camp, of how good of a receiver he's going to be and how involved he was going to be as a receiver. And that turned out to be completely true as soon as week 1 and week 2, right? So that was kind of baked in coming into the year. Was Jonnu Smith a huge part of the plans coming into the year when you have Tyreek Hill, when you have Jalen Waddle? I can't buy that, right? So I think they had to adjust on the fly. And I think the result of that was Jonnu Smith having the year that he had last year. And I could totally understand why they tried, they decided to move on him. Now, a month ago, they asked Tua, like, hey, what are you working on this offseason, right? What are you working on? And he said, I'm trying to get the ball out quicker. And that's when I heard that, I said, oh my goodness, because last season, I think he got the ball out at the second highest, the second fastest rate of any quarterback. And now he's going to get rid of the ball, trying to get rid of the ball even quicker. That doesn't, for me, that's not, that doesn't bode too well for Tyreek Hill if that happens to be true. Right. Looking at down the field and all that.
Yeah. And especially because it wasn't just the lack of downfield, but also like Tyreek Hill did less after contact, less after catch than he's ever done last year too. Almost every advanced metric was pretty negative about him. And that's the thing that's kind of scary. Yet all you have to do is see highlights. All you have to do is see what he's capable of doing. Man, I understand the people that get scared off. I mean, he was a first-round pick last year. This year he's going in the 3rd round. That still is a price that's too rich for some. Maybe risk-averse folks like myself who kind of don't want to dip their toes in the pool. But I mean, he could be a first-round player all over again, and that wins leagues if you get a first-rounder in the 3rd round.
100%. Now there are other players that are, could have similar upside, but not. You're not taking as big of a risk. Like sometimes, especially in redraft too, like you have guys like Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams, Chase Brown potentially available in that range. You're like, all right, well, like, do I really have to click Tyreek Hill? Because the problem is if you click Tyreek Hill there, like the range of outcomes is way bigger on Tyreek Hill than it is for those guys that I mentioned. So I'm like you a little bit where I might not click his name a whole lot, but he's one of those guys that I know I'm going to be kicking myself. If we're not drafted, in the middle of the season, I'm like, oh my God, he was right there. He was right there. I could have had him.
Let's talk quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, I think, are a little bit more stable, generally speaking, and in part because in most of the formats, we're only playing with one of them too. So you don't really need to take too many risks. So I try to restrict our topics to, players that are probably be drafted in the top 12. And there's obviously the top tier guys. I mean, what you're getting with them. The opportunity cost is really the risk them. It's not the player themselves. Like, what you're going to get out of Lamar, out of Josh Allen, out of Joe Burrow for that matter, health permitting with any player. That's the case. But there's some players that are volatile. And I think no one more volatile than Kyler Murray, who is a bit of a lightning rod sort of guy. I mean, we have the whole video game clause in his contract. There's that. There's, just the does he run? How much does he run? Are they going to take it another level this year? So let's talk a little Kyler Murray.
Yeah, Kyler Murray, I was big on Kyler Murray last year, but the one thing I didn't realize that he wasn't going to run as much as I thought he was going to run. Unfortunately, only 9% of the team's designed rushing attempts last year with Drew Petzing. If you look at earlier in Kyler Murray's career before the knee injury, we're talking 19% designed rushing attempts in 2020, 15%, and then 17% in 2022 before the knee injury. If you look at top rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, the top fantasy guys, you're looking at 15% or higher, and the really top ones, the really productive rushers are closer to 20. Kyler was above 15% every year from his rookie year on up until, his knee injury, and then last year as well, where I thought that a year removed might allow him to rush more. But I'm not convinced that, Petzing is going to make that happen. We're also kind of dependent on that Marvin Harrison Jr. breakout, right? Which can obviously happen. Like, the talent is there. But do I trust Petzing enough to make it happen? Like, I didn't love the way that Harrison was deployed. I would love to see him get more like gimme routes, and things like that, like get stuff closer to the line of scrimmage. But maybe we see another year where this offense runs through Trey McBride.
Yeah, and the thing is, the thing I'm disturbed by is the Cardinals looked at their roster, they looked at their passing game last year and said, let's run it back. They didn't. I mean, just add a deep guy. Just add Brandon Cooks. He's out there hovering like an angel. Just have him run deep. So Marvin Harrison doesn't have to always do that. Isn't always bracketed. I mean, it's really, I wonder the type of routes that he's going to run. We'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. more later. I guess we could kind of package it here together. They are a package basically when you're talking about it there. But yeah, I'm very frustrated at the Cardinals. I know they had to add a lot of assets defensively. Gannon waited a year for that. He's a defensive minded coach. So of course, he got his first round picks. He got his free agents this year. They did nothing for the passing game though.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And, I totally agree with you. I mean, these guys who stretch the field, like they don't necessarily have to get the ball, but these safeties are going to have to respect it, right? And now you can run Harrison on these in breakers and some slants and some routes, and he's really good at it too. Like he's a true separator against man coverage, and I would have loved to see him being used a little bit differently, early on. So, Marvin Harrison has the profile to be that guy. I just don't trust the offensive system and scheme enough to say like, okay, like this is going to change. Now, there's just no indicators anywhere for me to say like, oh, because of this or because of that, like I can see a change. Because of that, like it's hard for me to click Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name in drafts right now, especially given the guys going around him.
Yeah, exactly. And Murray, QB9 in the NFFC at least, which is where I always look for good ADP data because people are paying for it. They're playing for pay in those leagues, and what they're granted. I think the format there is a little different because it's six points for a passing touchdown that hurts Murray a little. So he could be higher elsewhere, but that kind of underscores the point. I'm not even comfortable drafting him as my QB9, let alone any higher.
I'd rather take shots on a few other rushing quarterbacks going a little bit later in drafts for a little bit more upside.
Yeah. Like give me Fields over Murray, for instance, there.
100%.
Yeah. It's just one example. All right. Bo Nix, another guy that I think is a little bit of a lightning rod. I mean, we could see year two huge growth out of Bo Nix. By all accounts, 3,775 passing yards in his rookie year, 4 rushing touchdowns, over 400 rushing yards. The team got better as the season went on. I'm a little shaky, a little squeamish on Nix for a couple of reasons I'll get into, but there's also that possibility of a big leap under Sean Payton's tutelage.
100%. And we could see that leap, in the passing game. He could definitely take a step forward, but similar thing with him. Like he was a sneaky rusher last year, but it was mostly on scrambles, right? He got 10% of the design rushing attempts. And remember who their running backs were last year, right? And now the running back situation is a little bit different this year, right? You got RJ Harvey, you got J.K. Dobbins, you got some guys who can run the rock. So I can't imagine that those design rushing attempts going up for Bo Nix. He would really have to, that particular number to go up to really hit that upside. Even if he takes a step forward, like you said, as a passer, I see him continuing to be hovering around that low end QB1 tier, while some of these other quarterbacks, like I mentioned, you mentioned Fields. I even love, Drake May later is one of the guys that I'm really targeting with just more rushing potential, kind of move ahead of him potentially, in those QB ranks and those QB finishes next year.
Yeah, we did a spot on VSiN today. We were talking about a prop of, plus, 11-1 price on Bo Nix getting 8 rushing touchdowns. He had 4 last year. And I don't think it's a high enough price for me. Last rushing touchdown was week 8. They don't use him in like there's no tush push. There's no Bronco bull rush. I'm trying to think of a different phrase for it. But Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, that was it in terms of like more than 6 rushing touchdowns. They got 14 and 12 respectively, Lamar and Josh Allen. So they took it to a different level. Not Lamar, excuse me, Hurts and Josh Allen. But that's just the point though. They don't really design those situations. They don't put them in those situations. So, and I think with the case of Nix, maybe he takes the next leap up, goes over 4,000 passing yards, throws for more touchdowns, but there's also a downside there too. And I think he needs the rushing to be able to be worth that price. And I'm not sure he gets it. So
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I'm kind of eliminating the quarterbacks this because we've got so many more at other positions. We're going to talk running backs next, but first, quick note from one of our sponsors over at Ultra GM. Is your team's GM messing it up again? If you have ever thought you could be a better GM than the guy running your favorite team, you should check out Ultra GM. Ultra GM is a revolutionary new take on fantasy football that makes you the general manager of your favorite team. Start with the team's full roster and build it through the draft, free agency, trades, and even the practice squad to create your ideal team. No fantasy football platform or GM simulator has ever provided the degree of realism and engagement that Ultra GM offers. and none has ever given you the opportunity to manage the team that you love and care for the most. Compete against family, friends, and even your team's real GM to see who is the Ultra GM. You think you can do better than your team's GM? Visit ultragm.com to prove it. I'm here with Faraz Siddiqi from UpperHand Fantasy. Follow him on Instagram at UpperHand Fantasy. You can see everything there that they have to offer. Let's talk running backs. I think the position is naturally volatile here. So I think, there's no shortage of guys we can talk about. I try to pick out higher end volatile running backs, boomer bust, flip players, no more so than Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, he could be the 1.1 or he could destroy your season like he did last year.
Yeah, and it's brutal. He is one of those guys who I do find myself clicking his name, when there isn't necessarily a wide receiver on the board that I like more, right? And again, similarly to what you mentioned before with a lot of these high-end quarterbacks, I think the downside with Christian McCaffrey too is, like these other wide receivers around his range that you're going to miss out on. That's really the risk when it comes to Christian McCaffrey too. Now, the good thing about drafting Christian McCaffrey this year is that you have one clear handcuff, which is not something you could say over these last few seasons, right? It was a little bit, of a, was it Gorendo? Was it Mason? Was it any of these guys? Like, they're always drafting these new guys. I think this year is pretty clear. It's Isaac Gorendo. So if you do draft Christian McCaffrey, at least you have an option to handcuff him. I'm not a big handcuff your own running back guy. I'm a big fan of handcuffing other people's running backs to increase your potential upside. But in this scenario, because Christian McCaffrey is so quote unquote injury prone, I hate to use that term because I just don't believe in it that much. But in his case, it's really hard to deny. But I would love to grab Christian McCaffrey where he's going. I think eventually he's going to be sneaking into the first round in all formats. Right now, on some platforms, you can get him in the second round. But the upside that he presents is absolutely enormous, right? And I'm somebody, I like to be a little risky sometimes. I like to risk it for the biscuit. And I think Christian McCaffrey is one of those picks. And you can pair him with Gorendo later on to kind of, protect your investment.
Those that follow my baseball work will get this reference. I'm getting some strong Fernando Tatis Jr. vibes. All draft season long, I was like, too risky for me. No, I don't think he's going to run again. Like the last weekend, I'm like, all these smart people are taking him. I've got second thoughts. It's too late to rectify it, but I feel like I could be wrong. I came to Jesus earlier on this one here. I think I'm going to have some shares of Christian McCaffrey after early thinking I wasn't. So I'm on board with this one here. Let me throw a question to you. I know you're big on Nico Collins and, wide receivers that you like, you were talking about. Nico Collins or CMC?
I'm going Nico. Okay. I have him ranked pretty high. I'm so bullish on Nico this year. And, he also has a little injury concerns as well, right? He hasn't put a full season together, but he was on pace for 1,400 yards last year. That would have been second only to, Jamar Chase and, Justin Jefferson. And I think he's up there in that tier with these elite wide receivers. He's one of the only big, one of the true big body X receivers we have in the NFL. He's kind of a little bit of a throwback type of player. I'm a big fan. I think he's going to command a 27-28% target share this season. Despite there being so many receivers there, I don't think you just add up their target shares and take away from Nico. I think it's more like the alphas eat first type of situation. So I think Nico's going to be really good. I think Nick Caley can potentially come in and do what these other offensive coordinators did when they left Sean McVay and what they did in their first year. Each of the last three, we're talking about on the Bucs, the Vikings, and the Falcons, right? Each of those wide receiver ones had their best year, or was on pace to have their best year with Chris Godwin last year. So I think Nico's going to have a big year this year. Sean McVay loves, targeting his wide receivers. Huge target share. I think over the last 5 or 6 seasons, the Rams have the highest target share to wide receivers for good reason. I think a lot of that's going to trickle over into Houston. Rant over. I love Nico.
Yeah, and not to provide all your rankings for everybody, but I caught you on Theo's podcast there, and you have him over Amon Ra, among others. So just as a heads up, he's not just high on Nico Collins. He's very high on him, and that's why I thought it was noteworthy to ask that versus CMC. So let us move on to another highly volatile running back, and that is Breece Hall. I think he's, this is a guy that was talked about at 1.5, 1.6, even as late as last year. It was a disappointing year last year. They have 2 other running backs. We heard Aaron Glenn in minicamp talking about wanting to get 3 running backs touches on the ball. Breece Hall is dropping to the late 3rd round now. What do you say on him?
It's funny that I feel like the media took that story and ran away with it a little bit,
For
prematurely. Like
sure.
Aaron Glenn, saying that this is going to be a 3-man committee. If you go back to what he said, like you listen to what he said, watch what he said, this is not what he said.
Mhm.
It's just not. He said that he has 3 big guys who could carry the ball, and
Mhm.
that's really it. This is like early on the offseason. He didn't, they didn't get into OTAs or minicamp yet, so it was a premature thing. And I just simply don't buy that this would be a 3-man backfield. I think Breece Hall is clearly the superior back here. Braylon Allen wasn't all that good last year, despite the early touchdown spree that he went on. I do think Breece is going to be the clear guy in that backfield and get 20 plus touches per game. I think the other thing too, like he rushed back from a knee injury last year, like he just mentioned that a few weeks ago. And then if you look at and you take that and you go back to the season and you look at the numbers, you're like, oh, like after week 11, he was just not the same guy. He had a reduced role. He only had 14 touches a game. If you look at earlier on in the year when he had 20 plus touches or 20 plus opportunities per game, he was a clear RB1. He was a mid to high end RB1, in those games. So the upside that you're getting at Breece Hall's price right now, if you're looking for a running back in that range, I think like he is the pick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's at the tail end of like that second tier starter, the third tier. Yeah, sign me up on that one. I absolutely agree. And I'll take, it's interesting because I think there's he's getting treated like worse than Tyreek Hill in terms of risk, in terms of price. And I would take Hall over Hill every time.
I don't even, yeah, and like in terms of risk, like you said, it's not close for me. I think the risk is way worse on Tyreek Hill. Now, the upside, I guess, is because of the upside that Tyreek Hill presents, but still, like Breece Hall also presents top 5 upside at the position. I really do. And the other thing too is like a lot of people say that he's not going to catch the ball as much this year, but number one, like who do they have besides Garrett Wilson? They have nobody. Like Breece Hall can easily be the second highest producer in this offense in the receiving game. And number two, like, yes, Justin Fields is somebody who loves to tuck and run. But believe it or not, like Fields was 2nd and 5th highest in check down rate over the last 2 seasons in 2 different systems.
Yeah. So
So
it's not just an
it's
Arthur Smith thing then. That's good to hear that.
100%.
Let's talk a little James Cook. There's multiple avenues towards being worried about him, whether it's touchdown luck or whether it's contract situations. There's a couple ways that you can get scared about James Cook. Nonetheless, though, he scored really high last year. Maybe had fewer opportunities. That might be part of the issue with him. What say you on James Cook?
Yeah, I think you highlighted the major issue here, and it's the lack of touches versus the surge of touchdowns that he had last year. He had the same number of touchdowns as rushing touchdowns, I should say, as Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs last year with 16. If you look at all the running backs in the NFL last year who had 13 or more rushing touchdowns, we're talking Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Bijan, Saquon, right? These guys averaged 306 rushing attempts.
Mm-hmm.
Cook had 207. Okay, so if that's not a clear sign of regression coming his way, I don't know what is. He
Right.
was the only running back in the NFL last year who had more rushing touchdowns than goal line carries. So
Wow.
he was scoring from all over, the place, like, all over the field. But the volume isn't matching up, right? If you look at, fantasy points, comes out with they have the expected fantasy points per game, for example, right? If you look at the volume itself, like among 23 qualifying running backs with 200 or more carries, he ranked 22nd of 23 in expected fantasy points per game. Obviously, you're looking at a Bills offense who can prop guys up, right? You look at Khalil Shakir, you look at him. It could totally happen. Even Keon Coleman could end up doing something, more than his opportunity as well. It happens. But his price, I think he's going off the board as like a borderline RB1, high end RB2. I'm kind of staying away at that price personally.
Yeah, and you're not. It's interesting because like you're paying like end of 3rd round, beginning of 4th round. That's not what you'd pay for a 16 touchdown guy. But I even acknowledging that it's kind of scary. He's right at the precipice. He's like the border cop between safe running back and running back dead zone. After that, you got Kenneth Walker. You've got all these other 4th round running backs and all that. So it's interesting. Where does he go as far as that goes? It is a walk year for him, but that also means that he could have a holdout too. So there's always that. And I think treating holdouts is if you think you know how it's going to resolve itself and how it's going to play out, I think you're fooling yourself sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes it works out great. Sometimes you get Brandon Ayuk. Sometimes you get Jamar Chase, and it worked out just fine. If you drafted, you bought the tiny little dip on Jamar Chase last year. It worked out pretty well for you. Week one notwithstanding, but yeah. One more running back for you here. I'm going to get into my co-host Nick Whalen's kitchen here. Talk a little Travis Etienne. And what happens with the Jacksonville Jaguars running job, new coaching staff, 2 times over. They're not beholden to Etienne, but they're also not beholden to anybody else. I know a lot of people are talking up Byshell Tootin. Are you in on Etienne at his discounted rate?
It's tough, man. If anyone says they know what's going to happen with this backfield, like they're lying, man. Like they just don't. They just don't know. It's hard to tell. Etienne coming out of college, extremely efficient running back. He had the foot injury, and last year he was just one of the most inefficient running backs in the NFL. And it's just hard to get behind that when you have Liam Cohen, who drafted Byshell Tootin, who is also one of the most efficient running backs in college, over the last few seasons. If you look at all the running backs, from this draft class, the only running back who was more efficient overall in the running game, and we're talking after contact rate and then missed tackle rate, it was only Ashton Genty who was more efficient than Byshell Tootin throughout their college career. Wow. So you look at who Liam Cohen drafted last year in Bucky Irving. He also happens to be one of the more efficient running backs in those categories. So for me personally, I am passing on Etienne. I am taking my shots in best ball at, Byshell Tootin. Tank Bigsby led the NFL in all running, among all running backs last year in missed tackle rate. So you have another running back on early downs, who could end up making an impact as well. He's not the guy I would bet on in terms of the receiving game. I think that's the one out that Etienne has, is having a role in the receiving game, similar to Tampa, right? With Rachaad White, who is also a better receiver than he was a runner, and he ended up continuing to make an impact in that department, but maybe not enough to make a true fantasy impact every single week. So that's kind of how I'm treating it right now.
All right, very good. We're going to talk wide receivers, but next, got to share a quick note for you from our sponsors over at Fantrax. Is there something you wish your fantasy league had, or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules, or playoffs, deeper team settings? Well, look no further, because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Fantrax even offers college fantasy football leagues. Create or join fantasy football commissioner leagues. Invite your friends and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top fantasy football platform in the industry for dynasty leagues. Fantrax is running a special promotion you don't want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/RotoWire today to enter for your chance to win a signed Jamar Chase jersey. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Go to fantrax.com/RotoWire. Sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. We are with Faraz Siddiqi. He's with UpperHand Fantasy. Let's talk wide receivers. We talked a little Tyreek Hill already. I'm putting Puka Nacua as a boomer bust sort of guy, a volatile player, a flip player, if you will, because it's health. It's very simple. I think he's been hurt throughout his college career, his pro career. Last year he was hurt, and we didn't know the severity of it until after game 1. I think he's kind of a make or break sort of guy. You spend that first round pick on him. Can you get him for 16, 17 games?
And that is a big question. And when he's on the field, he's going to deliver for you. But not only that, I did have him ranked pretty high, but I have to admit, man, when Davante Adams came over there, I think it significantly is going to impact Puka. Puka even said it today or yesterday, whenever it came out, that Davante Adams is going to lead the way. That's what Puka said, right? So yeah. If I had to bet on it, I would bet that Puka does get a higher target share than Davante Adams. However, I think he's going to make a big impact, right? And I think him and Matthew Stafford, Davante and Matthew Stafford, also make a very good, combination. So I think they're going to be one of the better duos, wide receiver duos in the NFL, maybe one of the best. But at the end of the day, Davante is going to make a big impact there, just like he made in New York last year, with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson was on his way to have a very, very good year, a wide receiver 1, top 12 wide receiver season. But when Davante got there. Obviously, he's buddy with his boy Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, he is a very quarterback friendly wide receiver, a very good wide receiver still at this age. So I think he's going to make a big impact. You talk about the health. I also talk about Devonta Adams. I think that's a huge factor as well. I'm okay drafting Puka where he's going right now, but I haven't drafted him a whole lot because I do like you mentioned Nico Collins. I have guys like that drafted, ranked over him. So when I look at the board, I'm usually taking guys like Nico and a few other wide receivers ahead of him.
Agreed. I have him in that tier, but I have him below the other receivers in that tier. I'm going to take Neighbors ahead of him. I'm going to take BTJ over him. I'm going to take Nico over him. I'm going to take Drake London over him, actually, too. I think that's also a little bit of a volatile player, too, but I do think I am buying into the Penix to Drake London connection.
Oh, yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So all those guys do go ahead of Puka for me, which means practically I'm not getting him a whole lot there because more often than not, someone's going to take Puka Nacua in the first round, and I'm not usually going to be that guy. Let's talk a little bit about Xavier Worthy. Everybody's over Rashee Rice right now. And, this is a guy who's, overall NFFC ADP is 40, but if you just filter from July 1st on, it's 29 and rising, which means Worthy might be slipping. And I understand you've got a full season of Rashee Rice. You've got a full season of Hollywood Brown, or at least start of a full season. We'll see how that plays out. What's left for Worthy here?
It's a good question, and I look at the roles and how the role of Rashee Rice can affect Hollywood Brown, can affect Xavier Worthy. Is Xavier Worthy going to be used on just those clearing routes and going down the field, or is he going to be used like he was at Texas and like he was used, a big portion of last year after Rashee went down, short to intermediate, and that's really that's what's most dependable when it comes to fantasy and what becomes the most consistent. Unfortunately, Xavier Worthy didn't really pop. He had all season to pop, right? Mm-hmm. But he didn't pop until the very end of the year, right? And I think it was great, and I think he had a couple of 20-point fantasy seasons. But I do think that Rashee is going to be the clear alpha here. And Hollywood Brown, I think he is a little bit underrated in terms of the impact that he can make on a team. And is there any overlap in terms of the roles that Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown can play? Like, they're both probably going to be intermediate, potentially deep targets for Patrick Mahomes. We know who the layup guy is going to be as long as Rashee Rice can stay healthy. So that's how I'm viewing it. Is the target share going to be there for Xavier Worthy, right? He only had one wide receiver one finish, up until the playoffs, like the actual NFL playoffs, right? So I'm a little bit worried there at his price. The ADP, isn't like, I like a lot of other players around that price. I think the price is kind of assuming that he's going to make a little bit of a jump. I'm just quite not there yet with Xavier Worthy.
I'm with you on that. And here it's price too. You're paying a fourth round price on a player that's probably not going to get 100 targets. And that makes it difficult to try to, to click there. Granted, he's going to get some jet sweeps. He'll get a little bit of that as well. So that is a little bit of a boost, but he's also never been on the field at the same time with both Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown. I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, Rashee Rice and Brown have never been on the field at the same time.
And we didn't even mention Travis Kelce, right? Like,
right.
Exactly. He's going to get his targets too,
Yeah, exactly. And I do think, as Charlene points out, that Patrick Mahomes does spread the ball from week to week. He's a classic take what they give you sort of guy, especially now in this point in his career that he's done that. It'll be interesting too with the Chiefs also, whether their tackle play. That's something I'm going to be watching pretty closely. Because we saw what happens when he doesn't get good left tackle play in the regular season as well as in the Super Bowl. And we've got a former backup on the Niners is probably going to, keep the seat warm until Simmons is ready. What will Simmons be able to do coming back from a torn ACL as the left tackle? I don't know. As a rookie in the NFL, it's kind of, rumor has it this league is hard for rookies.
Yeah, just a little bit. I could totally see that being an issue for Patrick Mahomes. Like, we haven't really seen him lock onto a receiver, besides Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. And when he's on the field, like, it's there. So yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, if the tackle situation isn't right, is Patrick Mahomes going to be launching those deep, right? And when the receivers are open deep, Mahomes, he's not always hitting them. Okay,
Right.
I gotta say it. Okay, he's just not always hitting those guys. Okay, so Tyreek Hill's a lot easier to hit because he's wide open when he was
Yes.
on the Chiefs.
He also
But it's
stays
a
in
little bit.
balance too. Oh, sorry. Is that a swipe at Worthy
Yes,
there? Sorry. Was a little bit, but
love
yeah.
it.
Yeah. One more receiver in this group, and that is Jameson Williams. It is tantalizing to look at his career arc and say, okay, this is going to be the next step. He's a made man. He's established. But I have some worries for us, and a couple. One, obviously the coordinator change. Ben Johnson is creative as it gets in freeing a guy up. And I know Johnny Morton's part of the tree, part of the family, maybe continues on the same path, but we'll see. They have a revamped offensive line, losing all-pro center Frank Ragnow. I just wonder, is he going to get enough targets for us to justify that wide receiver 25, 50th overall type of price? James Coe did a video for us on that, talking about how he thinks it's a little too risky for his liking there. How about you? How do you feel about Jameson Williams?
He's one of the guys I keep going back and forth on. But I think you make a great point about Ben Johnson, not being there. And Ben Johnson was the type of guy who's really, really good at getting guys open deep. He was really, really good at creating big play opportunities. And you look at Jameson Williams, like just running free on these crossing routes sometimes and these deep posts, and you're just like, where is the closest defender, right? And it was similar to what we saw, with Quentin Johnston, right, over in LA. You're like, this guy's like wide open right now. So Jameson Williams is a good player. I think in best ball, it makes a lot more sense because you'll know when to start him. But I think there is an opportunity here for a lot of duds, right? Without Ben Johnson there, it makes a big difference. And not only without Ben Johnson, but don't forget, Tanner Engstrom's also not there too. So, and he was very involved in the passing game. So I'm a little bit worried, about Jameson Williams in terms of is he going to be able to be consistent? He's going to have his games, right? So I think best ball, totally fine. He could rack up some big stuff, and the coaches have been talking him up like crazy. I don't know if there's a player in all of football where coaches have been talking more highly of in terms of them thinking that a player is going to be breaking out than Jameson Williams this offseason. So, whenever I see them talk about him, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have a little bit more Jameson Williams. But I'm like, wait. I got to think about this a little bit more, right? I think, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his targets. Amon-Ra is going to get his targets. Sam Laporta, a healthy Sam Laporta as well, because last year was banged up all year long, a bunch of injuries, right? Mm-hmm. So he didn't get the target share that we thought he was going to get, even the route participation that we thought he was going to get. I think that could change this year as well.
Indeed. I think that's true. I'm glad I have him in a dynasty league. So I have him. I'm just going to deal with it. He's just my guy. I'm not going to trade for him or trade him. But in redraft, I think you get put to the test every single time. So that is an interesting thing here. It is DraftKings Best Ball Week here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. My colleague, Nick Whalen, pre-recorded this promo that you're about to hear.
Football season is right around the corner, and there's no better way to lock in your fantasy dominance early than with Best Ball on DraftKings, where you draft once and ride your roster all season long. And right now, DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million Best Ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another Best Ball ticket to play free for a share of $15 million, giving you a second shot to win big. It's easy. Just draft your team once, no weekly management required, and let your top scorers automatically start each week. Across the whole season, every breakout star, every clutch play, every touchdown will count toward your quest for a share of $15 million. Look, I absolutely love doing these best ball drafts on DraftKings. Super easy, super quick. You don't have to worry about the waiver wire, all that in-season management. I'll tell you, so far, been drafting way too much of my guy, Brian Thomas Jr., getting a lot of Chris Godwin, a lot of Jordan Mason later in drafts. It's been so much fun to enter these best ball leagues, try out different strategies, build out a portfolio of your favorite NFL players. You can download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million. That's two chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. One per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by 9/4/25 to get one bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball. Sponsored by DK.
Good job by Nick Whalen at 1.25. We appreciate him for that. It is Best Ball Week, DraftKings Best Ball Week here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Faraz, when we're talking about these profile players, these volatile flip players, are you more or less inclined to draft them in best ball format versus a redraft?
Yeah, definitely more inclined, right? Because you kind of don't have to worry about, when they're going to pop off, because when they do pop off, they're going to be in your lineup, right? So you don't really have to worry about it, right? That's my rule. So a lot of these guys, like you mentioned, Jameson Williams, a bunch of the Tyreek Hill, if they hit, oh my goodness, like your team is looking pretty good. And later on in drafts too, like these guys who potentially on a redraft team, like you would never start. Like, you look at that guys like, Alec Pierce and like,
Rashid Shaheed. Yes.
Rashid Shaheed and Jameson Williams were basically the same player last year, right? Pretty much. Right. But you just kind of like never knew when to start them. So yeah, 100%. Definitely more willing to draft them in best ball formats.
The next question is the follow-up is then like, do you build a portfolio of them, or you just take one shot and have a bunch of stable guys? How do because best ball, I mean, it's not just about, strong roster. It's about correlation. It's also unique roster. I think that's the third element there. And in mass contest, you got to set yourself apart from the masses. So how volatile do you want to get? How willing are you to steer into this?
Yeah, what's funny? Like I actually created a document, for my community, and I'll even pass it on to your community too. I have a document, if you DM me over on Instagram, if you DM me the words best ball, I'll actually send you like a free, like, top 5 tips of what I do and how I construct my best ball lineups, on any of these best ball platforms, which is, it's really cool because like for me personally, like I do chase volume, regardless. So I do want some sort of floor, right? And like when you're talking best ball, sometimes you're always talking about ceiling, but I do want some sort of baseline, right? Because otherwise your team is not going to like have the consistency to be able to keep up with all these other teams throughout the season. And then when it gets to the playoffs, like you want your team to have some sort of baseline. So when these high upside players pop off, they can add to that baseline. Right. So that's really what it comes down to. Have some sort of baseline and then have these guys who could potentially pop off and take your team, like outside of the projections that you get every single week.
I'd say I'll add one other note is I'll probably crave the floor, at least with my first 2 running backs, more than other positions. I want that floor there. I'll take my shots more at wide receiver because I think it's naturally a more volatile position anyhow.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too, because, for me in best ball, I find myself really going wide receiver heavy, especially on DraftKings where, it's full PPR. You draft 3 wide receivers and a flex, right? So why you want to kind of focus on wide receiver just a little bit. And if you can get those running backs who have some volume, like, you look at like guys like Chase Brown, who's going to get a lot of volume in the receiving game this year. You look at even a little bit later too, like James Conner, David Montgomery, like some of these guys who are going to have a role, but you can kind of grab them a little bit later and stack these wide receivers a little bit early and potentially even stack them with their quarterbacks, later on. That's kind of like the sweet spot for me. Usually I don't always able to draft those players, but when I do, I'm really happy with my rosters.
Very good. That was our best ball segment for today. Again, draft one, get one. Check out the DraftKings promotion. Thank you for your sponsorship, DraftKings, and happy to be part of their best ball week here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We got one last position to talk about. That's tight ends. Quickly though, before we do that, we are on the BlueWire network. Briefly, here are their ads. All right, let's talk tight ends. I think this might be the least volatile of positions. There's a couple of guys that, Kyle Pitts is really not in our calculus anymore, but otherwise we'd have a whole 5-minute segment on that. I'm glad we're kind of done with that, to be honest there. As someone who was on him last year and finally, okay, it's never worked for anybody, but it might work for us. Well, it didn't work for us. So let's talk about TJ Hockenson instead. Didn't score last year, had plenty of high target games, but new quarterback again this year. Are you in on the tight end 4 price that it costs to get TJ Hockenson?
Is he really tight end 4 now? Oh my goodness. So yeah, I mean, yeah. The good thing about like when you say tight end 4, he is being taken, I think, significantly after George Kittle, so like you're a little bit of a gap there, which is nice. I am way more in on him this year than last year. Last year, the problem with him last year was he was coming off that multi-ligament injury, right?
Right.
ACL, MCL, like, so it was a complete avoid for me. And also he didn't come back till later on in the year. It was just, there was no point of rostering him, especially in redraft, right? So I was just completely off on him. He came back, he had a couple decent games, but this year, a year removed, and with, I like, for me personally, like, I'm all in on this play caller. Like, whatever the Vikings do, like, I feel like they're going to do it right. Right. Like, Kevin O'Connell just knows what he's doing. Right. He had Sam. He made us all like think that Sam Darnold's a good quarterback now. Right. And now the Seahawks paid him like he's a good quarterback. And I don't know what's going to happen there. Right. I'm a little bit worried. But now you got JJ McCarthy. That's fine. Like, I don't know what to expect from JJ McCarthy. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him, but I just trust Kevin O'Connell. That's really what it comes down to. I don't think I've had this much trust in an offensive system, outside of this one. So I do think that, the tight end position, TJ Hockenson is going to get a ton of targets. 2 seasons ago, he had 95 catches in this system, with Justin Jefferson on the field, with Jordan Addison. So I'm in. I'm okay with this price. I think if I miss out on the top 3 guys, I think I'm perfectly fine grabbing Hockenson, and I think you can depend on him all year long.
And I kind of misspoke. He is actually tight end 5 behind Laporta, but it is pretty close. Laporta at cost or Hockenson at cost?
I'm so out on Laporta at cost.
Okay.
So out. Yeah. It's just really, really high for me. I understand the ceiling there, but like we mentioned earlier, like, yes, like, I might not be avoiding Jameson because Laporta is part of that equation, but it's a similar thing with Laporta because he has a lot of competition as well. A lot of mouths to feed there. Without Ben Johnson, I'm just going to kind of steer clear of that high price tag right now.
I can appreciate that. Tight end 8 is Evan Engram, now joining the Broncos around pick 100 in most places. I've heard so many. This is the Denver Jimmy Graham comps now that he signed under Peyton there. I think that might be pushing it a little bit, but especially because, again, availability is a big ability, and I'm not sure Engram has that, but it could be massive too. Are you in on Engram?
Yeah, I think so. It's again with the tight end position. It's like, if I miss out on that guy, I'll take this guy. If I miss out on that guy, I'll take this guy. That's kind of what it is for me. And then, like, if I miss out on Engram, then, like, I'll go Njoku. If I miss out on Njoku, I'll go Tyler Warren. So that's really how I'm playing it. It really depends on who's on the board at that particular time, because I don't love to reach because maybe some guys might come back to me. So Evan Engram in a PPR league, I'm totally fine with it. I do think that the Broncos, the way they're set up right now, it's Courtland Sutton and everybody else, right? So Evan Engram could easily become the number 2 target. And like we mentioned earlier, if Bo Nix were to take a little bit of a step forward in the passing game, there is room for another receiver there. Like, you have these deep threat guys, right, who could be kind of interchangeable in terms of their role. They're not going to play a full route participation. You have the big slot kind of, I think there's going to be a competition between Devon Vele and Pat Bryant, and my bet would probably be Pat Bryant, the way that Sean Payton has been raving about the guy. But I think Evan Engram could end up being the clear, second receiver on this team. And because of that, I think he could end up, doing relatively well. I prefer him in PPR formats, because he never really was a big touchdown guy, but it could have been the system that he was in. But yeah, no, I'm okay with it. I'm not dying to get him, but I think he's a decent consolation prize.
I think so too. And I like your overall approach with the position too. Like, all the way down to Ferguson at tight end 15. I'm fine with that. Tucker Kraft at tight end 12. Sure. Sign me up. I'll do that. I probably won't be taking Kincaid or Loveland in that grouping. But there are options. That's my point. And you can find some there now. It's easy to say, okay, they're interchangeable, but it does matter who you click on. I get all that. Let me ask you one more bonus guy. I didn't throw this in the outline, but Jonnu Smith was big with the Dolphins earlier. We talked about this one under the Tyreek Hill segment, but he's now in Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith was craving him. He loved him in Atlanta. But they also have another tight end there, and that makes it a little trickier there with Freiermuth already present. Is there enough to go around for both those guys to eat? Does Jonnu eat in particular?
I think Jonnu's a decent best ball pick. Like if you remember, even in Atlanta, like everybody was starting Kyle Pitts, right? But then Jonnu Smith was having these random weeks where he was kind of doing his thing. It's also worth noting that there isn't really a clear second receiver in Pittsburgh, right? Like maybe Keenan Allen ends up there, or Keenan Allen ends up on a team that doesn't have that second this could be another situation where because of that lack of wide receiver 2, we could see a situation where some targets are funneled towards the tight end position. Now, Aaron Rodgers historically has not done that, but like I don't really buy into that a whole lot. It really comes down to who's on your roster, and he has to throw the ball to somebody. Is it going to be Calvin Austin, out of nowhere? I don't think so. So I can see Jonnu Smith in this scheme. Arthur Smith has desperately wanted him on his team, and I can totally understand why. Like he's an after the catch guy. Like he's really good. We saw what he was able to do last year. I'm not necessarily targeting him in redraft because I think he's going to be very up and down. In terms of tight ends you like to target, like you kind of want guys who are going to play a route participation of like 80% or higher, on a consistent basis. And Jonnu Smith, I just think he's going to be a 65, 70% guy at most because of the fact that Freiermuth is there. That might be pushing it, to be honest. So that's part of the reason why. Maybe in redraft, no. Best ball, sure.
All right. I like that benchmark stat, by the way. I think that's a good way to kind of cross some guys off your list and circle others. Just you find that route data, and we have it over at RotoWire. You can check that out. That's one of the things we do offer. So go use promo code YouTube15 if you're signing up for RotoWire. Get 15% off any RotoWire subscription with that promo code YouTube15. Faraz, I know you've got your company UpperHand Fantasy. You funnel it through Instagram. Tell people what they can find when they go there.
I mentioned the best ball thing, but also I created another document. It's a free Google Doc. Basically, if I had one league this year, basically my entire strategy of how I would operate that league, how I would draft, who are my targets, that sort of thing, round by round. You can go get it. You just DM me the word blueprint. Follow me, DM me the word blueprint on Instagram. I'll send that over to you, and let's talk. Let's chat. Like it's me in there. So like we could definitely talk. Okay. So I appreciate you guys a ton, and I appreciate you having me a ton. This was a lot of fun, Jeff. So thanks a lot.
Anytime. Again, UpperHand Fantasy. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on Twitter, but especially Instagram. And remember, Blueprint and Best Ball. Those are the 2 DMs you need to know. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up today's show. Thanks everybody for jumping in on the live stream, and for those who listen on the podcast as well. We'll be back at you again tomorrow with another good show. Thanks a lot. Take care.